In a bold and startling maneuver, a Russian warship recently made an audacious approach towards a U.S. naval vessel, igniting a flurry of global attention and raising serious concerns about escalating maritime tensions. This aggressive move has been captured on video, showcasing a dramatic display of military posturing that has left defense experts and international relations analysts in shock. But what exactly caused Russian aggressive approach? How did the U.S. react to this? Join us as we delve into the heart of this maritime confrontation, uncovering the strategic motivations behind Russia's warship aggressive move towards U.S. ship. In an astonishing move, a Russian Navy ship aggressively approached a core base guided missile destroyer, the USS Farragut. You can hear the USS Farragut sound 5 short blasts, which is the international maritime signal for danger of collision. The Russian ship only changed course after coming perilously close to the Farragut. A former U.S. security advisor described the Russian warship's maneuver as deliberate and dangerous. The Navy released a video showing a Russian destroyer following the USS Farragut in the North Arabian Sea, which is currently on deployment from a port. This action is seen as an act of intimidation and escalation in the Middle East. Former Ambassador Nancy Soderberg stated that this was an illegal and deliberate act, and noted that the Russians have done it before. This video released by the U.S. Navy shows a Russian battleship getting dangerously close to the stern of the USS Farragut. The American sailors issued 5 warning blasts, which is the international signal for danger of collision. When the Russian ship continued its approach, they made additional calls for it to back off. It was only later that the Russian Navy finally pulled away. They're repeatedly and consistently challenging our access to the seas and airspace all around the world. The freedom of the seas is essential, and this aggressive behavior is dangerous. Nancy Soderberg, a former U.S. ambassador to the UN and Deputy National Security Advisor, who now works at UNF, explains that the Kremlin has been using Cold War-era tactics like these for quite some time, despite repeated warnings from NATO. She highlights a similar incident in June, when a Russian destroyer came dangerously close, within 50 to 100 feet, of the USS Chancellorsville in the Philippine Sea. Reports also mention Russian jets performing these aggressive maneuvers in the air, getting alarmingly close to American aircraft. Soderberg emphasizes that this situation is getting out of hand and is a clear violation of international law. She warns that these reckless acts could have serious consequences if anything goes wrong. It's not just a minor issue, she says. One small mistake could escalate into something major. Russian warships play a crucial role in Russia's naval strategy, focusing primarily on intelligence gathering and monitoring global maritime activities. Unlike traditional warships, these vessels are designed for surveillance rather than combat. Their main objective is to collect data on foreign naval movements and capabilities, significantly enhancing Russia's situational awareness at sea. Equipped with advanced electronic surveillance systems, these ships can intercept and analyze various communications, including radar and radio signals. This capability is crucial for signals intelligence, providing valuable insights into the activities of foreign naval forces. Additionally, these warships possess electronic warfare capabilities, allowing them to disrupt or deceive enemy electronics. They can use countermeasures to jam enemy radar and communications, further enhancing their surveillance and intelligence gathering capabilities. These warships are outfitted with sophisticated radar and sonar sensor arrays, providing them with enhanced situational awareness. This enables them to discreetly monitor naval asset movements, including those of the U.S. Navy. While these encounters are not uncommon, as per international maritime law, Russian warships are permitted to transit through the U.S. Exclusive Economic Zone, EEZ. However, these encounters raise significant concerns about the potential for intelligence breaches and the disruption of naval operations, especially when Russian surveillance vessels come across key U.S. naval assets, such as aircraft carriers on the high seas. Therefore, understanding the critical nature of these encounters is essential for ensuring the safety and security of naval operations. Aircraft carriers are like floating airfields that are incredibly important for the U.S. Navy to show its power all around the world. They are like huge, movable bases that can carry lots of fighter jets and other aircraft. The US has the biggest and most advanced aircraft carriers in the world, and they are like floating cities with all the equipment and weapons needed for combat missions. These carriers are so big that they have more space for planes to take off and land than all the other countries' carriers put together. These massive ships are not just for show. They are used for many important tasks, like attacking enemy targets, keeping the seas safe, and helping out in disasters and other emergencies. They are like strongholds at sea, making it easier for the US Navy to do its job and keep control of the oceans. Because these carriers are so important, other countries like Russia are very interested in them. Russian spy ships are always trying to get close to these US carriers to find out more about them. They want to know how they work and what they can do so that they can be better prepared if there is ever a conflict between the two countries. When a Russian spy ship gets too close to a US aircraft carrier, it can lead to a tense situation. Both sides are trying to outsmart each other, like in a game of cat and mouse. The US Navy has to be very careful because the presence of these spy ships could lead to a dangerous situation that might even lead to a conflict between the two countries. So, it's not just a small thing when a Russian warship gets close to a US aircraft carrier. It's a big deal that could have serious consequences for the safety and security of the whole world. The most important part of the US aircraft carrier is the Combat Information Center, CIC. This center starts with a command issued to alert every crew member of a potential threat approaching the ship by sounding the alarm. The CIC, also known as the Action Information Center, AIC, is like the brain of the aircraft carrier. It's a special space setup and equipped with instruments to collect, display, and share information about combat situations. Think of it as the command hub, where all the crucial information is gathered, processed, and decisions are made to keep the ship safe and effective in combat. Information flows into the CIC from various sources, such as radar, sonar, visual lookouts, electronic countermeasure equipment, radio direction finders, intelligence reports, meteorological data, operation orders, and other publications. This multitude of information must be sorted, displayed, and analyzed to understand its tactical meaning. This is crucial for issuing commands and taking actions accordingly. Imagine one day the CIC detects a Russian spy ship in close proximity. Immediately, the combat center follows a stringent protocol for activating alarm systems. A series of audible and visual alerts is initiated across the aircraft carrier to warn the crew of the potential threat. This is vital to ensure that everyone on board is aware and ready to respond. All the crew members on board are highly trained to take on any challenge at any moment. They are well aware of the protocols and procedures to be followed during such situations. With the alarm blaring, the aircraft carrier goes on high alert, and the crew members rush towards their respective positions to perform their designated roles and duties. Clear and concise communication is emphasized in the military to ensure that information is transmitted accurately and promptly. Standardized procedures and codes are often used to convey specific instructions and responses efficiently. The Combat Center establishes communications through intercom systems, radios, or other communication devices, enabling officers in the CIC to broadcast important messages to the entire crew or specific sections of the ship, ensuring that everyone receives critical information. After the crew has been briefed about the presence of the enemy spy ship, all respective units immediately initiate both the defense and defensive protocols. This rapid response and coordinated effort are essential for the safety and security of the aircraft carrier and its crew. As we're aware, a primary goal of a spy ship is to gather valuable information from the aircraft carrier. This could include details about the sophisticated systems on board, mission plans, or even personal information about the crew members. To counter this threat, sailors on the aircraft carrier might receive an immediate order to switch off all electronic devices. This proactive step helps prevent potential interference or unauthorized information leaks, ensuring operational security. Turning off electronic devices not only prevents interference, but also helps maintain a controlled electronic environment on board. This controlled environment is crucial for operational security as it prevents unauthorized access to sensitive information and ensures a focused response to the situation. Moreover, U.S. Navy aircraft carriers are equipped with various offensive and defensive electronic warfare systems to counter or neutralize any threat. These systems can disrupt the spy ship's surveillance and intelligence gathering capabilities and impede their operations by interfering and jamming their communications. For instance, radar jamming is a key countermeasure that involves emitting signals to interfere with or overwhelm the radar signals used by the spy ship for surveillance. This disrupts their ability to accurately detect and track targets. Additionally, aircraft carriers operate sophisticated communication jamming equipment that can interfere with or block radio signals and communication frequencies used by the spy ships. These systems are designed to disrupt the enemy's ability to effectively communicate and coordinate. In addition, U.S. aircraft carriers can deploy decoy systems such as electronic decoys or chaff to divert the attention of the spy ship, further enhancing their defensive capabilities. These decoys mimic the electronic signatures of the naval vessel, creating confusion and making it harder for the spy ship to distinguish between real and false signals. Signals intelligence, or SIGINT, is another electronic warfare tactic used by U.S. aircraft carriers to collect signals and communication-related information. This information provides insight into the workings of the adversary or target, including verbal communications, written messages, data from radar, weapon systems, and more. This intelligence gathering helps in understanding the spy ship's activities, intentions, capabilities, and potential threats. SIGINT involves analyzing patterns in electronic signals over time. By studying these patterns, carriers can infer the spy ship's intentions, whether it's routine operations or potentially threatening activities. SIGINT is closely tied to electronic countermeasures. The carrier can use the intelligence gathered to tailor specific countermeasures, including electronic jamming, to disrupt the spy ship's communications and surveillance capabilities. If the situation escalates, this information also helps in initiating attack protocols. When deciding how to respond to a potential threat, the carrier's command structure conducts a thorough risk assessment based on gathered intelligence. This assessment considers factors such as the spy ship's behavior, historical context, and perceived threat level. The outcome guides the command and the combat center in determining the most suitable response measures, which can range from diplomatic engagement to defensive posturing, depending on the assessed risk level. Regardless of how swift and advanced these spy ships may be, they can never catch the U.S. aircraft carrier by surprise. This is thanks to the advanced surveillance systems on board, which can detect their presence from miles away. These systems are constantly searching for spy ships and ensuring comprehensive surveillance. The carrier's ability to detect and respond to threats is a testament to its advanced technology and the skill of its crew. U.S. aircraft carriers are equipped with state-of-the-art surface search radar, primarily used for surface search and navigation. This radar helps in detecting nearby ships and obstacles. In addition to these powerful radars, U.S. Navy aircraft carriers use a variety of detection technologies, including visual lookouts, electronic countermeasures equipment, radio direction finders, and intelligence reports. Continuous monitoring ensures that potential threats, including spy ships, are not only detected, but also thwarted in their attempts to remain undetected. It's important to understand that spy ships are not traditional warships. Their primary purpose is intelligence gathering, not direct combat. If detected, they may not have the defensive capabilities to engage in a confrontation. Their emphasis is typically on avoiding such situations. Therefore, their presence near U.S. aircraft carriers doesn't pose an imminent threat to the carrier's safety. However, based on the assessment through advanced surveillance, if the ship is deemed a threat to the sovereignty of the United States, then the threat must be mitigated. In the worst-case scenario where U.S. Navy sailors on the carrier need to take defensive or offensive actions, strict rules of engagement, ROE, govern their response. These rules are guidelines or directives that define the circumstances, conditions, degree, and manner in which the use of force or actions that might be construed as provocative may be applied. The ROE for U.S. Navy vessels facing close encounters with enemy ships prioritize de-escalation, but provide a framework for escalating responses when necessary. The decision to use lethal force is governed by the imminent danger posed by the approaching enemy vessel. As we delve into what an encounter between a Russian warship and a U.S. aircraft carrier might look like, it's evident that the situations can be quite challenging. One thing is certain: being well prepared is an understatement when it comes to the readiness of the U.S. Navy to counter these threats. The U.S. Navy boasts warships equipped with the latest cutting-edge technology, advanced surveillance systems, and state-of-the-art offensive and defensive mechanisms in its arsenal. This formidable combination enables the U.S. Navy to detect, assess, and mitigate threats within a matter of minutes. Meanwhile, 4 Russian ships have arrived in Cuba, including a formidable guided missile frigate, the Admiral Gorshkov. This lead ship of its class is armed with Kaliber cruise missiles, Zircon hypersonic missiles, and Onyx anti-ship missiles, making it a formidable presence. It docked in Havana's port, flanked by a tugboat and a fuel ship. Imagine a Russian frigate, bristling with advanced weaponry, docking in Cuba, a country under a U.S. trade embargo since 1958. That's 66 years of strained relations, making this event all the more significant. The arrival of this Russian ship in Havana sends a powerful signal from Putin, showing that Russia can assert its presence in America's backyard whenever it chooses. But the frigate wasn't the main message. The real warning came a bit later, as a half-submerged Russian nuclear-powered submarine, the Kazan, cruised into port with Cuban and Russian naval flags fluttering in the wind and a contingent of soldiers on deck. The sheer size and power of this vessel left the Cubans clearly impressed. However, Putin's display isn't just about impressing Cuba. His target is just 160 kilometers to the north, Florida. The presence of this Russian naval destroyer so close to U.S. shores is due to the ongoing geopolitical tensions. Right now, off the coast of Florida near Cuba, this Russian flotilla, including the nuclear-powered submarine, represents a bold statement of Russia's strategic capabilities. In an unprecedented move, the U.S. military has announced that a nuclear-powered submarine has just arrived at Guantanamo Bay this morning. Meanwhile, hundreds of Cubans are waiting in the sweltering heat to get a glimpse of a Russian warship. Russian officials have promised that the public will be allowed to tour the vessel, which is one of the most advanced in President Vladimir Putin's navy. This warship is capable of launching hypersonic missiles that travel over 6,000 miles per hour. The ship will be open for public tours for the next 3 days, offering a rare chance for the Cuban people to see such advanced military technology up close. Historically, this kind of frigate belonged to Cuba's Cold War allies. Positioned nearby is the nuclear-powered submarine Kazan, marking the first time such a vessel has docked in Cuba. The arrival of these 4 Russian ships represents the largest Russian convoy to Cuba in years. Both Russian and Cuban officials have stated that this show of naval power is not a threat to the United States. Nevertheless, the U.S. is keeping a close eye on the ships and their movements. A sign by the gangplank reads that the ship's primary mission is combat operations against enemy surface ships and submarines. Though none of the vessels are currently armed with nuclear weapons, the Cuban Armed Forces Ministry has hinted that this could change. The Cuban visitors are only allowed on the main deck, under the watchful eyes of Russian sailors. Above them is a deck equipped with advanced communication devices, and armed soldiers are on guard, ensuring no one gets too close. These Russian sailors, who might soon be fighting in Ukraine, seem to be enjoying the calm and beauty of the Caribbean. During the tour, the sailors demonstrate the ship's anti-rocket defense systems and a cannon that can fire up to 23 kilometers, nearly 15 miles. These ships are stationed just 90 miles from the U.S. coast, signaling that Putin has brought his warships right to America's doorstep. This bold move comes just weeks after an American provocation, where the U.S. gave Ukraine the green light to use American weapons to strike Russian territory. Putin warned that this was an escalation, and his response has been to deploy warships to Cuba. This tension-filled situation continues to develop, with the US and Russia both closely monitoring each other's actions. The presence of these advanced warships in Cuba is due to the ongoing geopolitical struggles and the delicate balance of power. As Cubans tour the warships, the world watches closely, aware that this show of military might could have far-reaching implications. This situation has some Americans worried, hoping this isn't the start of something bad for humanity. We're the ones caught in the middle, paying the highest price for conflicts and disagreements between powerful groups. They send troops and start wars, but we're the ones who suffer. Washington is trying to downplay the incident, saying this isn't anything new, as Russia has sent ships to Cuba before. While it's true that Russian ships have been going to Cuba for years, this time is different. Moscow has never sent a submarine to Cuba before, and now there's a nuclear-powered, nuclear-capable Russian submarine docked there. Both Washington and Cuba have been quick to clarify that the submarine isn't carrying nuclear weapons. This reassurance is crucial because Cuba has been in a similar situation before, at the center of a standoff between Washington and Moscow. This scenario brings back memories of the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, when Cuba was at the heart of a showdown between the Soviet Union and the US. The year before, in 1961, the US had placed nuclear weapons in Italy and Turkey, which was seen as a provocation. In response, the Soviets prepared to place nuclear missiles in Cuba. In 1962, US spy planes captured images of these preparations, and Washington couldn't let that happen. However, they couldn't attack directly either. Instead, they decided to blockade Cuba, sending out their warships. The Soviets responded by sending their own vessels, leading to a tense standoff with Soviet and American ships face to face. The world was just minutes away from an all-out nuclear war. Thankfully, both sides eventually backed off. This event, known as the Cuban Missile Crisis, almost made Cuba the flashpoint for a nuclear war, giving the country a significant symbolic importance in global politics. Now, with this recent development, Cuba once again finds itself at the center of a major geopolitical struggle. The presence of the Russian submarine has heightened tensions, and the world is watching closely. It's a delicate situation, and while officials try to reassure the public, the underlying concerns remain. Vladimir Putin has sent his warships to Havana once again, including a nuclear-capable submarine. This move is a loud warning to the US, signaling that Russia's patience is running out. The big question now is, will the US take heed or continue to support Ukraine in its conflict? This is one of those rare times when Putin openly lays out the Kremlin's latest strategy, and it's a lot to take in. Putin has made it clear that he wants Ukraine to surrender vast areas of territory, including regions that Russia has already annexed unilaterally: Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, Donetsk, and Luhansk. He also demands that Ukraine renounce any ambitions to join NATO in the future. Furthermore, Putin insists that Western sanctions on Russia be lifted. He has stated that once these conditions are met, he would order a ceasefire in Ukraine. However, these demands have been firmly rejected by Ukraine, NATO, and the United States. Putin's bold moves and demands have escalated tensions further. The deployment of the nuclear-capable submarine to Cuba is not just a show of strength, but a clear message to the US. Do you think Putin has interior motives by 4 Russian warship has to Cuba order than the stated reasons? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.